Hello students, this is Santosh Jood from Parthank Mathematics Institute, Ahmedabad, and in this video I'll take you through the solutions of the mathematics part of NTA test paper number 11. The first question: if summation of r is equal to 0 to 25, 50 CR times 50 minus r C 25 minus r is k times 50 C 25, then k is equal to. Let us expand and see what this gives. R is 0 to 25. 50 CR is by definition 50 factorial by 50 minus r factorial into r factorial. 50 minus r C 25 minus r is 50 minus r factorial by 50 minus r minus 25 minus r factorial times 25 minus r factorial, right? In both we have used the formula NCR is n factorial by n minus r factorial times r factorial. Okay. Now what happens here, just pay attention to the terms and you will see that this is 50 factorial by the 50 minus r factorial and 50 minus r factorial can be cancelled away. So I get r factorial. Here I get 50 minus r minus 25 plus r, or just 25 factorial, and then here I get 25 minus r factorial. Okay. Now if I multiply and divide by another, see the summation depends only on the r terms, right? So keep only the r terms inside, take the other terms outside, r from 0 to 25. Now multiply and divide the whole thing by 25 factorial. That is, multiply by another 25 factorial and divide by 25 factorial. Now this 25 factorial in the numerator can be taken inside because it is a constant, right, and doesn't affect the summation. Therefore it becomes 50 factorial by 25 factorial 25 factorial into summation of 25 factorial by r factorial into 25 minus r factorial. Now if you see by definition again, this is 50C25 and this is summation of 25CR, r is equal to 0 to n, r is equal to 0 to 25 they are given, yeah, because this is n factorial by r factorial into n minus r factorial where n is 25, and this is also 50 factorial by 50 minus 25 factorial into 25 factorial. So you can consider it as 50C25. Now this summation is basically 25C0 plus 25C1 up to 25C25. The summation of all the binomial coefficients you know is 2 to the power n. So 50C25 into 2 to the power 25. Now they have said that this summation is equal to k 50C25. This is equal to k times 50C25. Therefore k must be 2 raised to 25. K is 2 raised to 25. Option A. Quite direct problem, nothing very complicated about that. Question number 2. If 1 log base 3 square root of 3 minus 3 raised to 1 minus x plus 2 and log base 3 4 into 3 raised to x minus 1 are in arithmetic progression. If a, b, c are in AP, then we know twice b should be equal to a plus c. Okay, so let us write it the same way. Basically you can write as b is a plus b, c by 2. That the middle term must be the average of the other two terms. So if we write it in this form, so here this whole thing can be written as log 3 into 3 power 1 minus x plus 2 the whole power half, right? And on the other side a plus c, a is 1 plus this is log 3 into 4 times 3 raised to x minus 1. Remember this is not 4.3 power x, 4 into, it is 4 times 3 raised to x. Okay, now by power rule this comes in front and gets cancelled with 2, right? This 2 can, 1 by 2 comes in front and gets cancelled. So I have log of 3. Can I write this 3 by 3 power x? Basically it is 3 power 1 by 3 power x. And here, in order to get that 3 somehow, log base 3, I'm going to write this 1 as log 3 base 3. And then here I have log 4 times 3 power x minus 1. Now, here this can become, the addition of logarithms is a product, right? So 3 into 4 times 3 power x minus 1, which is log of 3 times 4 is 12 into 3 raised to x minus 3. So I have log of 3 by 3 raised to x plus 2 base 3 is equal to this. Now since the logarithms are equal, the arguments must be equal. So if I write this is equal to this, I would get 3 by 3 power x plus 2 is 12 into 3 power x minus 3. Take 3 raised to x as t. So this becomes 3 by t plus 2 is 12t minus 3, or 12t, let us say we multiply the whole thing by t squared. So 12t squared minus 3t is equal to 3 plus 2t. I am multiplying everything by t. So 3 plus 2t is equal to 12t squared minus 3t. Bring it all to one side. 12t squared minus 5t minus 3 is 0. Now what are the roots of this? T is equal to minus b plus or minus square root of b squared minus 4 times 12 into minus 3 by 2a is 24. So this gives me t is equal to 5 plus or minus square root of 25 plus 144 by 24. So this is 13. So it is 5 plus or minus 13 by 24, which is 18 by 24. 5 plus 13 is 18 by 24, or minus 8 by 24. That is basically 3 by 4 or minus 1 by 3. Right? 5 minus 8. 5 minus 13 is minus 8. Now, t is nothing but 3 power x. 3 power x is always positive, cannot be negative. So this is the root and this cannot be. So 3 power x is 3 by 4, or x can be log of 3 by 4 to the base 3. Right? So the answer is option, okay, to get to this, to simplify this form, it is easy to see that it is log of 3 base 3 minus log of 4 base 3. Okay? I'm just using the quotient rule. If I divide the numbers, logarithms get subtracted. And this is 1. 1 minus log 4 base 3. So the answer is 1 minus log 4 base 3, which is option B. Okay? 1 minus log 4 base 3. So the first one was option A, second B. Let us move on to question number 3. The area in square units enclosed by mod y minus mod x is equal to 1 and x squared plus y squared is equal to 1 is. Now x squared plus y squared is equal to 1 is just the unit circle. Here it is 1 comma 0, here it is 0 comma 1, here it is minus 1 comma 0, and here it is 0 comma minus 1 basically. Now what about these lines? They are lines actually, no? Now in each quadrant, here x is greater than 0, y is greater than 0. So mod x is x, mod y is y. Here x is less than 0, so mod x is minus x. And y is greater than 0, so mod y is y. In this area, x and y both are less than 0. So mod x is minus x, mod y is also minus y. What about this part? X is greater than 0, so mod x is x, and y is less than 0, so mod y is minus y. So this is how the 4 lines would be. So in the first quadrant, let us say this is the first quadrant line, second quadrant line, third quadrant line, and fourth quadrant line. So the first quadrant line, that is mod y minus mod x is 1, using this condition becomes y minus x is 1, or minus x plus y is 1. This line has slope 1, and y-intercept, let us say y-intercept would be minus c by b, which is 1. That is, if you put x is 0, you get y is 1. So this line starts from the 0 comma 1 and is at an angle 45 degrees, and it goes here. See, I am drawing this line only in the first quadrant, right? Because I have told it is for first quadrant, not in the second quadrant, or nothing, no extension here. It is only in the first quadrant. Go to the second quadrant. What will you get? Minus x and y, right? So it will become y minus x is 1, or x plus y is 1. Now here also slope is minus 1 and y-intercept is 1. So it is a line from here in this direction. Okay. Now the same way you argue, and you can find that these lines are also like this. So basically the lines and the circle do not intersect, but they only touch at one point. So they do not, between them, they don't enclose any area. Between the lines and the circle, you can say there is an infinite area. No, all this area, but no. The proper thing is that within this circle, the area enclosed by the circle and the lines is 0. They are not actually enclosing any area. Okay, so the answer is option B, 0. It would be different if the lines were something like here, no? If the lines were like this, then they would enclose some part, this part or this part, and so on. It would be interesting. But here there is no area between the lines and the circle. They are just meeting at one point. So area is 0. Question number 4. Conditional probability based problem. What do they say? A computer producing factory has only 2 plants, T1 and T2. Plant T1 produces 20%, plant T2 produces 80% of the total computers produced. So if you take a computer, probability that is produced by T1 is 20 by 100. Probability that it is produced by T2 is 80 by 100. 7% of the computers produced in the factory turn out to be defective. Let us call D to be defective, that is 7 by 100. Then they have given that it is known that P computer turns out to be defective given that it is produced in plant T1. That is, defective given that it is from T1 is equal to 10 times P computer turns out to be defective given that it is produced in plant T2. That is P of D given T2. Okay. Where P of E denotes the probability of an event. Okay. A computer produced in the factory is randomly selected and it does not turn out to be defective. Then the probability that it is produced in plant T2 is. So you have a good computer. Let us say basically they found that a computer is good. We need, what is the probability that it was produced in T2? That is, probability that it was produced in T2 given that it is good is how much? Okay, interesting question. So let's see how to go about this. Now first of all, can we find out numerical values for these probabilities? Let us take probability of D given T2 as X. Now this would give probability of D given T1 as 10x. Now we know that probability of D should be probability of D given T1 times probability of T1. That is, it is produced in T1 and the probability of it being defective plus probability of being defective in T2 and produced by T2. That is, this 7 by 100 is, according to our calculations, 10x into 20 by 100, right? P of T1 is 20 by 100 plus x into 80 by 100. Okay. So if I were to calculate all these, cancel the 100 quickly. So that would give me 7 is equal to 280x or x is equal to 7 by 280, 1 by 40. Okay, 1 by 40 is this probability. So this probability is 10 times 1 by 40. Let me write it down. P of defective given T2 is 1 by 40. And therefore P of defective given it is produced in T1 is 10 times 1 by 40, which is 1 by 4. Now from this, we know that probability of the computer being good that it is produced in T2 is 39 by 40, right? It has to be good or bad. It can be defective or not defective. If defective is 1 by 40, then the good is 1 minus 1 by 40, 39 by 40. The same way, probability that it is good given that it is in T1 is 3 by 4, 1 minus 1 by 4, right? These two we have evaluated now. Now remember, they have said that what we need is probability of T2 given G. It is good. Given that it is good, what is the probability that it is coming from T2? Now this we know is nothing but probability of G given T2 into probability of T2 by Bayes theorem, no? By the total probability of it being good. So let us substitute the values. Probability of good given T2 is 39 by 40. Probability of T2 itself, what is T2 itself, is 80 by 100. By probability of good, of course we will write as probability of G given T1 into probability of T1 plus probability of G given T2 into probability of T2. And this. So probability of G given T1 we found has 3 by 4, and that produces only 20% of the computers. And we know G given T2 is 39 by 40 into 80% of the computers. So what happens to our calculations? Again, the 100 can be cancelled out. Okay, and then let me cancel out also the zeros here, and so that way the 4s also can be cancelled out. So I get 39 times 8 by 3 times 20 plus 39 times 8. Cancel each term by 4, I get 39 into 2 4s, right? 2, 5 and 2. So 15 plus 39 into 2, or 78 by 15 plus 78, which is 78 by 93. Very interesting problem. So the answer is 78 by 93, option C. So you see, they are asking you probability of T2 given that it is good. It is produced in the second machine, second plant, given that it is good. But they have not said anything about the probability of being good at all, only the defective one. So from that we evaluate the conditional probabilities of being defective, from which we get the conditional probabilities of being good, and from that we come to the final answer using Bayes theorem. This is basically Bayes theorem. Nice problem. Let us go to question number 5, another interesting question. The set of values of B for which local extremum, that is local maxima and minima of the function f of x are positive, where f of x is equal to 2 by 3 a squared x cube minus 5 by 5a by 2x squared plus 3x plus b, and minima occurs at 1 by 3. Sorry, maxima occurs at x is equal to 1 by 3. Okay, very simple problem. Let us start. We know that maximum occurs at x is equal to 1 by 3, and they have said that the local extremum values are positive. That is, the local maxima and local minima should be positive. We have to find out what are the allowed values for B. Now let us quickly see what happens. If for local extremum f dash should be 0, that would give me 2 by 3 a squared into 3x squared minus 5a by 2 into 2x plus 3 is 0, or 2a squared x squared minus 5ax plus 3 is 0. Correct? Now this can be factorized easily. It is 2a into a, 2ax into ax, and then 3 into 1 with minus in both places. This implies x is 3 by 2a or 1 by a. Okay. So 2 points. So one of these has to be this maximum. It can be this or it can be this, we don't know. So let us see, if we assume that how can we say 3 by 2a is the maximum. We have also the second, how to check for maximum or not, take the second derivative. The second derivative of x would be 2a into 2x, 2a squared into 2x minus 5a, or 4a squared x minus 5a. This is the second derivative of x. Okay, let us write this down quickly on the next page. The second derivative of x is 4a squared x minus 5a, and I have two values of x, 3 by 2a and 1 by a. So first case, I take x is equal to 3 by 2a as the maximum point. Okay, if this is the maximum point, then I have to substitute f double dash of 3 by 2a should be less than 0, right? This would be 4 into a squared into 3 by 2a minus 5a, which is to 6a minus 5a, which is a. So a should be less than 0. If a is less than 0, and then they have given that the maximum occurs at 1 by 3, in this I get a is 9 by 2, which is greater than 0. So there is a contradiction here. So x is equal to 3 by 2a cannot be the maximum. X is equal to 1 by a can be the maximum point. In that case, f double dash of 1 by a will be the same expression here. 4a into 4a square into 1 by a minus 5a will be minus a. If this is to be less than 0, a has to be positive for maximum, right? If a is positive, and we know that x is equal to 1 by 3 is the maximum, equating it to this, I get a is 3. Okay, so a is 3 is the value for our function. Therefore, what will f of x be? If a is 3, then the whole function can become 2 by 3 into a squared, so 9 into x cube, minus 5 by 2a x squared, 5 by 2 into 3 into x squared, plus 3x plus b. Alright, this function I have just written here using the value of a. So this becomes 6x cube minus 15x squared by 2 plus 3x plus b. Alright. Now from this they have asked us what should be the values of b for which the local extremum are positive. That is, the local minima and local maxima are positive. Okay. What will be the value of local maxima? By the way, if x is 3, then the other value of x, this x is 3 by 2a becomes 3 by 2 into 3, 1 by 2. At this point it has to be minimum. So at 1 by 2 it is minimum, at 1 by 3 it is maximum. So both they have said that f of 1 by 2 and f of 1 by 3 both have to be greater than 0. That is the meaning of local extremum values are positive. So let us take f of 1 by 2 is greater than 0. F of 1 by 2 is 6 into 1 by 8 minus 15 into 1 by 4 by 2 is by 8 plus 3 by 2 plus b. So this would become, if this is 8, 12, so 6 minus 15 plus 12 by 8 plus b, and this is 3 by 8 plus b should be greater than 0. Let me continue here. 3 by 8 plus b greater than 0, or b greater than minus 3 by 8. Okay, first thing. Now f of 1 by 3 is going to be how much? F of 1 by 3, substitute here, it is 6 into 1 by 27 minus 15 by 18 plus 3 into 1, 1 plus b. Now this is 2 times is 9 times. LCM is 18. So 4 minus 15 plus 18. 4 minus 15 plus 18 by 18 plus b should be greater than 0. Or b should be greater than 4 minus 15 is minus 11. So 7 by minus 7 by 18. So b greater than minus 3 by 8 or b greater than minus 7 by 18. But if you see that minus 7 by 18 is smaller than this, right? That is on the number line. If minus 3 by 8 comes here, minus 3 by 8, minus 7 by 18 would be slightly here. Because what would be the common LCM? LCM would be 72. If you change this to 72, this is 27 by 72. Whereas this would be only 28 by 72. So what I am saying is minus 7 by 18 is smaller than minus 3 by 8. So you can't have this region, only this region beyond minus 3 by 8. So only b greater than minus 3 by 8 can be the answer. So b greater than minus 3 by 8 is here. Okay, very simple problem. The first thing is we find the values of x where the function has extreme values. Okay, that is maxima or minima. So that is 3 by 2a and 1 by a. And then you show that 3 by 2a cannot be a possible value. 1 by a has to be the value for maxima, so that it satisfies the conditions. From that you get the value a. So you get 1 point for the maxima, 1 point for the minima. And using the condition that both should be positive, you get two criteria like this. B is greater than minus 3 by 8 and B is greater than minus 7 by 18. So of this is the proper range. Question number 6. If P and Q are two statements, then P or not of P implies and Q is equivalent to. Now first of all, this can be very easily done if you remember what is the not of P implies Q. This is identical to P and not Q. Okay? Okay. This is an identity. Using this here, we get P or not of P and not Q becomes P and not of not Q. So this is P or P and Q. Okay? This is like P union P intersection Q basically, which in the end is P. P or P intersection Q is always equal to P. Okay? So the answer is P, option B. Very simple problem. Remember here it is like union and intersection, the idea. Question number 7. The coordinates or the orthocenter of the triangle that has the coordinates of midpoints of its sides as 0, 0, 1, 2, minus 6, 3 is. That is, we have a certain triangle. Excuse me. Let me draw it a little more to the right because the point is more. So the triangle is 0, 0, 1, 2 and minus 6, 3. Minus 6 and 3. Okay. So no, this is not the triangle, sorry. These are the midpoints of the sides of the triangle. So the actual triangle should be like, if I were to draw, how would I put it? So if for this point to be the midpoint, I will need two sides, one here and one here, and there will be a side here. So this solid line is the actual triangle, let us say. Okay, so let us call these points A, B, C, and the actual triangle is PQR. Now, see, remember, how do you find the orthocenter? Orthocenter of a triangle is the point of intersection of its altitudes, right? So from one vertex you draw the perpendicular to the other side. From this vertex you draw the perpendicular to this side and find the point of intersection, that is the orthocenter. So what is the really long way to do this problem? You know the midpoint here, you have midpoint here, you know the midpoint here. Using these three midpoints you can solve for these points actually. Take them as x1, y1, x2, y2, x3, y3. You can get three equations, x1 plus x2 by 2, all that. So solve for all these 3 points. After you solve for all those 3 points, find one altitude, find the other altitude, and then using that you get the orthocenter. That's really long. But first of all, there is a special case of the right angle triangle. If you have a right angle triangle, the orthocenter is very simple to compute. See, the altitude from here to this is this side itself, and the altitude from here to this is this side itself. So if the triangle is right angled, then the vertex containing the right angle is the orthocenter. Orthocenter is vertex containing right angle. Yeah, for a right angle triangle. So that should give us some hint. Maybe there is something to do with right angle triangle here. How to establish that? We don't even know the vertices or the sides. But however, we can find the vertices of, we know the vertices of this small triangle inside, the midpoints. And let us try to find what will be the, what kind of a triangle is this? What is the slope of this side? The slope is 2 minus 1 by 2 minus 0 by 1 minus 0, which is 2. And what will be the slope of this line? The slope of this line is going to be 3 minus 0 by minus 6 minus 0, which is minus 1 by 2. So you see the slope of this line and the slope of this line, the product is minus 1. So they are perpendicular. So this ABC is perpendicular. The triangle formed by the midpoints is perpendicular. Now we know that the line joining the midpoints is parallel to the other side, right? To the third side. So this angle is also 90 degrees. This angle also therefore becomes 90 degrees, which shows that this triangle PQR is also a right angle triangle. Therefore the orthocenter is only Q. So you see, so far we have already found that the orthocenter is going to be in Q. So if we find the vertex Q alone, we have solved the problem. How to get the vertex Q? Now you see, already we have also seen that if this is 90, everything is 90, then this shape is a rectangle. In a rectangle, the diagonals bisect each other. That is, the midpoint of QC is equal to midpoint of AB. Let us say QC is x comma y. So QC's midpoint is x by 2 comma y by 2 is equal to AB's midpoint is minus 6 plus 1 by 2, 3 plus 2 by 2, which is minus 5 by 2 and 5 by 2. Therefore x comma y is minus 5 comma 5. So this is the vertex, this is the coordinate of Q, and therefore minus 5 comma 5 is the orthocenter. See, it's a simple problem, very few calculations. If you guess that this is a right angle triangle. To do that, first of all I check the slopes of the triangle formed by the midpoints, and indeed they are perpendicular. Therefore the whole triangle also has to be a right angle triangle, because this line is going to be parallel to this line, all those theorems. And once you recognize that this is a rectangle, you know that the vertices, the diagonals bisect each other. You get the midpoint of AB is the same as midpoint of QC, and easy calculation for x and y. Very good. Let's move on to question number 8. On differentiating tan inverse of x with respect to x, the result would be. So this question, of course, we know differentiating this is going to be very difficult. So I take x is equal to tan theta and see how it gets simplified. So the term within the brackets is square root of 1 plus tan square theta minus 1 upon tan theta. This becomes secant theta minus 1 upon tan theta. This can be written as 1 by cos theta minus 1 by sin theta upon cos theta. This is equal to 1 minus cos theta by cos theta, the whole thing divided by sin theta by cos theta. So this is gone and I get 2 sin squared theta by 2 in the numerator. 1 minus cos theta is 2 sin squared theta by 2, and sin theta I can write it as 2 sin theta by 2 cos theta by 2. 2 and 2 are gone, sin squared theta and sin theta are gone. So this is tan theta by 2. So what we have in the bracket is tan theta by 2. Therefore tan inverse of tan theta by 2 becomes just theta by 2. Simple, right? Theta is nothing but tan inverse of x. Remember, x is equal to tan theta. Therefore theta is tan inverse of x. Therefore the given function is just tan inverse of x by 2. So differentiating this with respect to x, I get 1 by 2 times 1 by 1 plus x squared. Okay, 1 by 2 times 1 by 1 plus x squared is option A. So question number 8, option A is the correct answer. Very simple. Take x is tan theta and you have simplified the whole thing. Now we come to another nice question based on quadratic inequalities and all. The sum of the squares of all integral values of a for which the inequality x squared plus ax plus a squared plus 6a is less than 0 is satisfied for all x belong to 1 comma 2 must be equal to. How are we going to do this? First of all, this equation is a parabola. If I write y is x squared plus ax plus a squared plus 6a, then this is a parabola. If this is a parabola, we know that it is open upward, right? And they have said that this parabola in this range 1 to 2 must always be less than 0. So graphically, what do we mean? This, let us say, is 1, this is 2. The parabola open upwards should always be less than 0 in this region. That is, it should be something like this. So that between this two interval, in this interval, it is always negative. Okay. So you can say in one sense this parabola, the roots of the parabola should be beyond 1 and 2. That is one way of saying. The other thing is, you notice that the value of the parabola y at 1 should be less than 0, y of 2 should be less than 0. And then also we know that for this to have real solutions, its discriminant also should be greater than 0. Okay. So these are the three conditions from which we will try to limit the possible values of a. Okay. The first thing, let us see y of, okay, the easiest one is delta is greater than 0. Now delta is the discriminant, that is b square minus 4ac, b is this, c is this, a is 1. So b square, a squared minus 4 times a is 1, c is a squared plus 6a is greater than 0, implies a squared minus 4a squared minus 24a is greater than 0, or minus 3a squared minus 24a is greater than 0. Divide by minus 3, I get a squared plus 8a should be less than 0. Okay, when I divide by minus 3, divide by minus 3. Alright, so this means a into a plus 8 is less than 0, or You know this kind of quadratic inequalities, no? The roots are 8, minus 8 and 0. If it is less, it is this region in between. So A should be between minus 8 and 0. Okay? It is a strict greater than, because if it is greater than or equal to, that would mean it will have only one root, and so it won't cover the whole thing. So for the time being, we neglect that case of strict equality. Okay. So this is one range we got. Now let us consider y of 1 is 0. If I put y of 1, what would I get? Let me write y of x is x squared plus ax plus a squared plus 6a. Y of 1 is going to be 1 plus a squared plus 6a, which is a squared plus 7a plus 1. Now this has to be less than 0. We saw that it has to be less than 0. If this is so, find the roots here again. A can be minus 7 plus or minus square root of 49 minus 4ac, 4 upon 2, or minus 7 minus 7 plus or minus square root of 45 by 2, or you see this is nothing but minus 7 minus 45 is 9 into 5, right? So 3 root 5, I can take 3 root 5, this is 9 into 5 by 2, and minus 7 plus 3 root 5 by 2. Okay, roughly see, the question in the end deals with integral values for a. So I just need to know what is the boundary here actually involved. You know how much is root 5? Root 5 is about 2.23. Okay, so this whole thing is going to be a is minus 7 minus 6.69 by 2 and minus 7 plus 6.69 by 2. Now this is going to be minus 13.69 by 2, which is minus 6.845, something like that. And then here I have, this will be minus 0.31, minus 0.31 is minus 0.165, somewhere in this region. A can have these two values roughly, and since the inequality is less than 0, remember we are coming back to this again and again, you have minus 0.165 here and minus 6.845 here. A has to be in this range. Okay. Let us go to the next case. The a, that is y of 2 is less than 0. Do the same thing. Y of 2, put 2 here. Y of 2 is equal to 4 plus 2a plus a squared plus 6a, or a squared plus 8a plus 4 is less than 0. Therefore, a should be minus 8 plus or minus square root of b square. 64 minus 4ac is 4 into 4, 16 by 2, or this is minus 4 plus or minus 64 minus 48, 8 by 2. This is minus 8 plus or minus 4 root 3, because this is 16 into 3. This is minus 4 plus or minus 2 root 3. How much is this value? Minus 4 minus 2 into 1.732 and minus 4 plus 2 into 1.732. Now this is minus 4 plus 3.464, or roughly minus 0.536, and here I will get minus 7.464. Okay, so the roots are supposed to be, that is a is supposed to be from minus 0.536 to minus 7.464. A can be in this region. So now you see, compare it with this and then imagine In this I get a has to be between in another region, right? That is, it says from minus 0.165 till minus 6.845. It says this range. And in the first thing I got between 0 and minus 8. So we have yet another case. A can be from 0, between 0 and minus 8. So of these three, the possible values are only this range then. Here to here. That is more or less from minus 6.845 to minus 0.536. All this to delineate this range. Okay. So the integer values therefore can be minus 6, minus 5, minus 4, minus 3, minus 2, minus 1. And they have asked us the sum of squares of all integral values of a. So sum of possible a squares are 36 plus 25 plus 16 plus 9 plus 4 plus 1. How much is this going to be? 16 plus 9, 25, 50, 55 plus 36 is 91. So the answer is 91, option D. A bit tricky problem. First of all, you have to recognize that it is a parabola open upward and it has to be less than 0 in this interval 1 to 2. So it has to be of this shape. So that gives us three conditions. One is y of 1 is less than 0, y of 2 is also less than 0. We can't say anything else about y of 0 or anything. Somewhere in between value also, that is some value here also should be less than 0. That much we can say. Now with these two conditions and the condition that it should have real roots, we get three intervals. And from those three intervals, we choose the common interval among all three, which is this minus 0.536 to minus 6.845, from which we get the integer values and then the sum of squares. Okay, question number 10. F is a real valued function, but from the positive real numbers, r plus to r plus, let us say, all positive numbers, given by f of x is x by 1 plus x. Then f is what are all the values of f? Interesting question. Now when this, if you see, it's a completely positive valued function, right? When x is positive, this is going to be always positive. Okay, so it is defined in that region. See, how to prove it is 1 to 1? The easiest way, I told you also in yesterday, or in the previous video, is the first, that is, it should be an increasing function or a decreasing function throughout in that domain. Okay, so let us find f dash of x. What happens to f dash of x? See, this gives us 1 plus x squared here, and then 1 plus x in the numerator times 1, and then minus x times, differentiate this, again 1. So I get 1 by 1 plus x squared, which is always greater than 0, right? So this means that f of x is an increasing function, is increasing everywhere, increasing everywhere. Therefore, it will be like, where is it starting? It is starting from, at x is equal to 0, it will be 1 at 0. If I put x is 0, it becomes 0. If I put x is tending to infinity, it becomes 1. It is like infinity by infinity. So 0 and it reaches 1, but it's a constantly increasing function. It goes towards 1 at infinity. Okay. Now we have shown that it is 1 to 1. If it is increasing everywhere or if it is decreasing everywhere, it is a 1 to 1 function. Okay. Now how to show the it is onto, either from this graph, because the value of the function can be only from 0 to 1, whereas the range is 0 to infinity. Okay. So therefore it is not onto. If the range was 0 to 1 here, then it is onto. What is the other way to show? Check the inverse. If f of x is x by 1 plus x, what will be the inverse? Y plus yx is equal to x, or y is x into 1 minus y, x is equal to y by 1 minus y. Now here the inverse function is x by 1 minus x, we can say. Now what do we see from this function? For values of x greater than 1, this becomes negative, which is not allowed because it is a function from positive real numbers to positive real numbers. So this will be positive only when x is less than 0. This will be negative, x is less than 1. When x is greater than 1, it becomes negative. So it doesn't cover the whole codomain, so it is not onto. So the answer is it is 1 to 1 but not onto. Option B. 1 to 1 but not onto. Moving on to question number 11. This question also was there in one of the previous papers, and very simple arithmetic based question. The mean and standard deviation of 100 observations were calculated as 40 and 5.1. So I have x bar is 40 and standard deviation is 5.1. Okay, or I can say the variance is 26.01. Find the square of 5.1. But these are wrong values, by a student who took by mistake 50 instead of 40 for one observation. So wrong observation is 50, right observation is 40. Then the correct standard deviation is how much? So the same thing, we have to find the correct mean, the correct sum of squares and all that. So let us go step by step. First thing, mean. Now we know that x bar is summation of x upon n. Therefore summation of x, the wrong value, is equal to the mean, wrong mean, which is 40 into n is 100, by the way. So 4000. Okay. Now if sigma x is 4000, remove the wrong and add the right. So sigma x correct, let's say n new, is 4000 minus this 50 but added 40. So this is 3990, or new mean is 3990 by 100, which is 39.9. Let us go to the variance to calculate the sum of x squareds. Let me start in a new page. Variance, we know by definition, is x squareds, summation of x squared by n minus x bar, basically x bar squared. So here I have 26.01 is nothing but summation of x squared by n is 100 minus x bar is 40, the old one, the wrong one. So if you put all this and take that 40 here, 1600, right? So 1626.01 is summation of x squared by 100. Now take it to the other side, 162601 is summation of x squared, the old one. So the summation of x squared new should be this 162601. Remember, we have to subtract 50 and add 40, but here it is squares. So subtract 2500 and add 1600. Effectively it becomes like subtracting 900. So it is 162601 minus 900, which is 107,116. So the correct sum of x squareds is this. Let us calculate the correct variance. The new, so that is 161701 by 100 minus the new mean 39.9 the whole square, right? Now what would this become? 1617.01 minus 39.9 square is a mess, but do it using 40 minus 0.1 the whole square. 40 minus 0.1 the whole square is 1600 plus 0.01 minus 2 times 40 into 0.1. So that would be minus 8. So this would become, you see, 1600 minus 1600 and 0.1 are all gone. What I mean is, this is 1601 plus 8. So if you subtract these two, I get only 17 plus 8, which is 25. So sigma squared nu is 25, or the sigma nu is 5. Wow. So the answer is 5. Okay. Now of course you could have guessed immediately, because since it's a very small change, the difference is not going to be that much. So the answer is going to be close to 5, close to 5.1, which is 5. Okay. It would be tricky if they had given 5.05, 5.1, 5. Or 4.95 and all those values, then it would have been interesting. The options are too different from this, and so you could have easily guessed it is going to be 5. Moving on to question number 12. The value of summation k is 1 to 10 sine of 2 pi k by 11 minus I cos 2 pi k by 11 is. See, now all this, something about this 2k pi by n should immediately bring to your mind the roots of unity, nth roots of unity. Because you know, nth roots of unity, omega, can be written as cos of 2 pi by 2k pi by n plus I sine 2k pi by n basically. And this k can vary from 0 till n minus 1. So this will give you the nth roots of unity. Okay. So you see those things here, right? So the main thing is to bring in this form here. First thing is that. Then you will recognize that this can be, since it is 11 here, we can say that it is nothing but the 11th roots of unity. Right? So that is my idea. So what I am going to do now, this single term, just take that single term, sine of 2 pi k by 11 minus I cos 2 pi k by 11. This is nothing but, I can multiply minus I squared here. Minus I squared is 1. And to make the whole thing a little bit easier, minus I cos 2 pi k by 11. If I take a minus I common, then I would get cos 2 pi k by 11 plus I sin 2 pi k by 11. Okay. Now, this you see, you need the summation now, right? So let me put the summation. K is 1 to 10. K is 1 to 10. Summation of k is 1 to 10. Now this minus I is common, and I get summation of the cos of 2 pi k by 11 plus I sin 2 pi k by 11 from 1 to 10. Now, what does this even mean? Now this means, if you have 11th roots of unity, the roots can be written as 1 omega, omega square, omega cube up to omega power 10, right, where omega will be cos of 2 pi by 11 plus I sin 2 pi by 11. Okay. Then everything is 4 pi by 11, 6 pi by 11 up to 20 pi by 11. Those are these numbers. So what they have given in this bracket is summation from 1 to 10, that is starting from omega till omega power 10. If you realize that this is omega, then at 2 it will become omega squared. When k is equal to 3, it becomes omega cube, and so on. So the summation required actually is nothing but omega power k. K is from 1 to n. Okay. This can also be written as with a minus I. Remember, there is a minus I in front. You understand what I am doing? This whole thing, if you want more explicitly, cos 2 pi by 11 plus I sin 2 pi by 11 power k is equal to cos 2k pi by 11 plus I sin 2k pi by 11. Right? Therefore, if you take this as omega, then this is omega power k. So I am writing it as omega power k. So this is nothing but minus 1 omega plus omega square plus omega cube up to omega power 10. Now there is this fantastic rule about the nth roots of unity. If you add all the nth roots of unity, you should always get 0. This is true here till 10. If it is a 20th roots of unity, from 1 plus omega square up to omega power 19 should be 0, and so on, right? So this way, omega plus omega square plus omega cube up to omega power 10 is minus 1. So put that here. It is minus I into minus 1, which is plus I. Very simple. So the answer to this question is plus I, option C. Remember, you have to recognize that these terms are from here you can get the cube roots of unity, basically. So I take this minus I squared just to adjust it to, or you just pull out a minus I and you will get a 1 by minus I, and 1 by minus I is an I, right? Whichever way. Basically it is minus I times the product of the cube, summation of the cube roots of unity, 11th roots of unity, not cube roots, the 11th roots of unity. Okay, question number 13. Now, what is this problem? Limit n tends to infinity, summation of r is equal to 1 to 4 power n square root of n by root r 3 root r plus 4 root n the whole square is equal to. Looks completely unbelievable how to make this summation and all, but then already all this limit n tends to infinity, all this should point you to the theorem of fundamental theorem of integration, right? Integration as the limit of a sum. You know, limit n tends to infinity, summation n is equal to 1 to some, let us say, sorry, r is equal to 1 to n times p, f of r by n into 1 by n can readily be converted to 0 to p f of x dx, right? This is like f of x, this 1 by n is like dx, this very small interval, and if it is from 1 to np, if it is 1 to n, the integral is 1 to 1, 0 to 1. If it is 1 to np, the integral is 0 to p. Okay, we'll use this here. So we have to bring a function of r by n and a 1 by n. So how to do? Start with that function inside. Square root of n, square root of r, 3 square root of r plus 4 square root of n the whole square. If I take a square root of n from inside, pull it out, and also take the square root of n to the denominator, okay, this I am bringing it to the denominator, and then from here I am taking a square root of n common. So this gives me square root of n into 3 times square root of r by n plus 4 the whole square, or this becomes 1 by square root of r by n into 3 times root of r by n plus 4. This root n squared is n, right? So now I have 1 by square root of r by n, 3 root of r by n plus 4 times 1 by n. I've got a function of r by n, right? And summation. So if I write down the question now, limit n tends to infinity, summation r is 1 to 4 times n. The whole thing that I've simplified is now 1 by square root of r by n, 3 times square root of r by n plus 4 the whole squared. Sorry, here I missed this whole squared. I'm squaring here, this n is this. Okay. So basically whole squared into 1 by n. This can be equal to integral 0 to 4, 1 by, instead of r by n you put x, root x, 3 root x plus 4 the whole square dx. Okay, 0 to 4 because it is 1 to 4n, and 1 by root x, 3 into root x plus 4 the whole square is whole square, and dx is dx. This 1 by n basically takes the place of dx. Now you see what happens, how to integrate this integral. Take 3 root x plus 4 is dt, and if you differentiate, 3 into 1 by 2 root x is, take this as t is what I meant, and when you differentiate, you get 3 into 1 by 2 root x dx is equal to dt, or dx by root x is nothing but 2 dt by 3. Okay, and then limits also, when x is 0, t is 4, when x is 4, t is 3 into root 4 plus 4, which is 3 into 2 plus 4 or 10. So the integral becomes integral 4 to 10. This dx by root x is 2 dt by 3. 2 dt by 3, and this is t squared. So 2 by 3 t squared. So this on integral becomes 2 by 3 of minus 1 by t, right? 1 by t squared, the integral is minus 1 by t from 4 to 10. How much would this be? 2 by 3 into minus 1 by 10 minus of minus 1 by 4, which is like 2 by 3 times 1 by 4 minus 1 by 10, or 2 by 3 times, the LCM is 20 of course. This becomes 5 minus 2, or 2 by 3 into 3 by 20, which is 1 by 10. So this integral is 1 by 10. So the summation is also 1 by 10. Okay. So this is a very nice rule. Integration is the limit of a summation. Okay, remember this rule. R is equal to 1 to np, or it can be 0 to np also. Doesn't make a difference in this limit. F of r by n into 1 by n is integral 0 to p f of x dx. Okay, very interesting problem. Question number 14. The angle of elevation of a cloud from a point 250 meters above a lake is 15 degrees. That is, there is a lake. Let us say this is the surface of the lake, and there is a cloud. Let us say the cloud is at some height h, because eventually the question is what is the height of the cloud. The angle of elevation of the cloud from a point 250 meters above the lake. So from the lake, if you are standing at a point 250 meters above, from here you look at the cloud at an angle 15 degrees. Okay? Okay. Then the angle of depression of its reflection in the lake is 45 degrees. Now this will have a reflection somewhere here. Okay? The distance of that reflection also is h from the surface, right? So the whole thing is like 2h. Now they said that the angle of depression of this is 45 degrees of the the shadow, or the of the reflection. The height of the cloud is, how high is this cloud? Okay, so how to do this? Basic trigonometry. Write tan 45 and tan 15, and then let us see how we can eliminate things from that. Now first of all, before that, if this height is h, the whole thing is h, this is 250. So this is h minus 250, that is only this distance. Excuse me, let me write it clearly. What I mean is, this small distance here is h minus 250, and this whole distance is h plus 250. So if I say, first of all, in triangle ABCD, okay, in triangle ABC, if I say this distance is x, tan 45, what is tan 45? Tan 45 is going to be BC upon AB, or 1 is going to be, BC is h plus 250 upon AB is x. So I get x is also h plus 250. Okay. Now in triangle ABD, tan 15 degrees is BD by AB. Now tan 15 is BD we know is H minus 250 by AB is X, and X we have found as H plus 250. So basically it is H plus 250. This is equal to tan 45, tan 15. Okay. How to find tan 15? Very simple. Tan 45 minus 30. Alright. How much would this be? Tan 45 minus 30 is tan 45 minus tan 30 by tan 45 plus tan 30. Right? So if I were to substitute this 1 minus tan 30 by 1 plus tan 30 is H minus 250 by H plus 250. Now of course you can substitute root 3 and then multiply and get into all that complication, or use componendo and dividendo. That is, if I have A by B is equal to C by D, then A, here I am going to do, let us say B minus A, or A plus B simple, so that I get 2H. A plus B by A minus B will be C plus D by C minus D. So A plus B, these two together I will get 2 by A minus B. Subtract these two together, A minus B is minus 2 tan 30. This will be C plus D is 2H and C minus D is minus 500. So minus and minus can be gone. So 1 by tan 30 is H by 250. I cancel 2 and 2 and then 2 and 250. So this gives me H is equal to 250 by tan 30. Now I can substitute the value of tan 30 of course, which is 1 by root 3, which is 250 root 3 meters. So the answer is 250 root 3 meters is the height of the cloud. 250 root 3 meters, option A. Quite a simple problem based on heights and distances. Just do it carefully. All the algebra, do it carefully. Question number 15. Let P be the relation defined on the set of all real numbers such that A and B are related if secant square A minus tan square B is 1. Then P is equal to. How to do this? Now let us look at that relationship a little more carefully. Secant square A minus tan square B is 1, or secant square A minus 1 is equal to tan square B. Now secant square A minus tan 1 is tan square A is equal to tan square B. Right? Now, when will this condition hold? Tan square A is equal to tan square B basically. If this is true, then they say the the A and B are related. Okay, tan square A should be equal to tan square B, or you can even say secant square A is equal to secant square B, or you can come to all that conclusions. Now, if this is equal, then what can you say? That A should be n pi plus B, right? Or B plus n pi, or it can be B minus n pi also, where n is an integer. So since n is an integer, I avoid that minus pi, because you know it's only squared, right? If it's not a squared, it has to be always plus n pi. What I mean is it can also be B minus n pi or n pi minus B. All that can hold. So if this is the condition for A and B to be related, now let us see. If A is related to A, then it means A is equal to A plus n pi. That is, n is 0 satisfies this. So A is related to A. So you can say it is reflexive. Symmetric, that is, if A is related to B, is B related to A? That is, see, A is B plus n pi. Therefore, I can say B is A minus n pi, where n is another integer. So this implies that B is related to A. So A is related to B implies that B is also related to A. Therefore, it is also symmetric. Now transitive, A related to B implies A is B plus n pi. B related to C implies B is C plus n pi. Let us say n pi, another integer. Substitute B there, I get A is C plus n pi. This is going to be another integer. This means A is related to C. So these two are implying A related to C. Therefore, it is also transitive. So this relation is an equivalence relation. It is symmetric, reflexive and transitive. Question number 16. The general solution of the differential equation 2 times square root of xy minus x dy plus y dx is equal to 0 is x and y are greater than 0. Okay. This, if I rewrite this way, take the dx that side, y dx, so minus y dx, and then bring the dx here, dy by dx is minus y by 2 root of xy minus x, or y by x minus 2 root of xy. You see, this is a homogeneous function. Homogeneous function, right? So I can take y is equal to vx, and the standard technique, no, dy by dx is v plus x into dv by dx, and substituting this here I get v plus x into dv by dx is y is vx by x is x minus 2 times x into vx. This becomes v by, okay, vx, let me do it one more step, 1 minus 2 root v. What I have done here is x into x is x squared, out of the square root it becomes x, take that x common, you get this. So x and x are cancelled. So what I have is v plus x dv by dx is v by 1 minus 2 root v. Bring v to the other side. X dv by dx is v by 1 minus 2 root v minus v. This becomes v minus v plus 2v root v by 1 minus 2 root v. V and v are gone. Therefore, rearranging the terms, 1 minus 2 root v by 2v root v is equal to dx by x. dv, of course, here. I am bringing dx by x here and taking these terms there. Separate these two terms, it is 1 by 2 into v power 3 by 2 minus 2 root v by 2 root v, so it becomes 1 by v. Integrate on both sides, I get first this 1 by 2, v power 3 by 2 on integration becomes v power minus 1 by 2 by minus 1 by 2, right? And then minus 1 by v is minus log v is log x plus c, let us say. So what happens here? This 1 by 2 and 1 by 2 are gone. I have minus 1 by root v minus log v is log x plus c. Substitute v, I get minus 1 by root of y by x, correct? V is always y by x, minus log of y by x is log x plus c. Now this becomes minus root of x by y minus log y minus log x is log x plus c, or minus root of x by y minus log y plus log x is log x plus c. Cancel these two. So this, if I multiply a minus on that side, I get log y plus root of x by y is some minus c. Minus c is just another arbitrary constant which can be taken as c. So solution is log y plus root of x by y is equal to an arbitrary constant. Let us see log y plus root of x by y, option C. Log y plus x plus root of x by y is equal to c. Question number 17. Let f be from minus 1 to 1 to r. A function defined by f of x is the maximum of minus of mod x and minus of root of 1 minus x squared. Okay. Now you see, what is this? Minus of mod x is easy to plot. Mod x, you know, mod x basically is going to be like this, right? Minus of mod x is the reverse, so it has to be like this. But we have to cut it to x is equal to 1. So only in this region we are going to look at only from minus 1 to 1. Okay. The red is minus mod x. Now let me draw what is going to be root of 1 minus x squared. Minus root of 1 minus x squared. See, that is not very difficult to identify. If you take f of x is minus root of 1 minus x squared and you square it on both sides, then f squared is equal to 1 minus x squared, or x squared plus f squared is 1. That is, x f of x is a circle basically, and minus means the lower branch alone, right? You have the full circle is here, but we are concerned only with the minus part. And since this is a unit circle, radius 1, it passes exactly through these 2 points. Okay. So now they have said the maximum of these two functions. Okay. Now that I am going to identify with green. See, there are two functions. The red is one function and the blue is another function. The red, blue, red, blue, red and blue. So in this region, to make it clear, yeah, in this region from here to this point, the blue is greater than the red, right? It is above the red. So this will be the maximum. And in this region, the red is greater than the blue. So this is the maximum. The same here as well. This is maximum. And from here, you can show this point is 1 by root 2, 1 by root 2. So this green is the actual curve. Okay. So now in this green color, which is f of x, the maximum of this, how many points are not differentiable? K is a set of all points which are not differentiable. So it's very easy to say that at this point, which has a sharp corner, at this point and at this point, at these 3 points, the function is not differentiable. So it has 3 elements. So the answer is 3. Okay. If the same question were about the minimum, just to, for the sake of completeness, the minimum would be like this. It is here, it would be like this. The black line, the minimum in this region is this. And here it is going to be here. So the minimum would have only 2 points of non-differentiability. Maximum has 3 points. Okay. And they are both continuous functions in that domain. No discontinuities at all. So the answer is, there are 3 points exactly. One is the origin. This point is going to be 1 by root 2 comma minus 1 by root 2. And this is going to be minus 1 by root 2 comma minus 1 by root 2. Okay. Let us go to question number 18. The value of 2 sine squared theta plus 4 cos theta plus alpha sine theta plus cos 2 alpha plus theta is. Okay, it's a very simple problem based on trigonometric manipulations. Let us take only this term and then we will write the other terms together later. So 4 cos theta plus alpha and sine alpha sine theta. Now this term can be written as 2 cos theta plus alpha into 2 sine alpha sine theta. What is 2 sine alpha sine theta? It becomes cos of theta minus alpha minus cos theta plus alpha, right? Now this would give me 2 cos theta plus alpha times cos theta minus alpha. Important to remember all these identities, huh? You can't afford to make any mistakes here. Minus 2 cos square theta plus alpha. Now the same way, this term also becomes 2 cos, right? So it is cos a plus b and cos a minus b. So it becomes cos 2 theta plus cos 2 alpha. When you add them both, you get 2 theta. When you subtract them both, you get 2 alpha. Minus 2 cos squared theta plus alpha. So substitute this here now and then bring in all the terms. Okay, this you are going to put here. So what do I get? I get the next page. Let me write 2 sine squared theta. What is this here? 2 sine squared theta plus the whole term plus cos 2 theta plus cos 2 alpha minus 2 cos square theta plus alpha minus 2 cos squared theta plus alpha, excuse me, plus cos 2 alpha plus theta. Okay, now let's see how we can simplify all this. Now 2 sine square theta is 1 minus cos 2 theta, right? The same way here, 2 cos squared alpha, or let us say minus 2 cos squared theta plus alpha. Here you have cos 2 alpha plus theta, no? That is 2 cos squared theta plus alpha minus 1. So we will cancel these two, and then you also cancel these two, and then 1 and minus 1 are also gone. So the only thing that remains here is cos 2 alpha. So it is only a function of alpha, so it is independent of theta but dependent on alpha. So 18, option B is the right answer. 19. Determinant A is given, B is adjoint of A, C is 3A. Then the determinant of adjoint of A is how much? Sorry, adjoint of B by determinant of C is how much? Okay, so now we know that determinant of C is very simple. Determinant of C is determinant of 3A, but when I take that 3 out, it becomes 3 cubed times determinant of A, right? Because there are 3 rows. So imagine A multiplied by 3 everywhere, and then take 1 3 from here, 1 3 from here, 1 3 from here. So it is 27 determinant of A. What about adjoint of B? Adjoint of B is nothing but adjoint of A. Determinant of an adjoint, do you remember this? That determinant of adjoint of A is determinant A squared. The general rule is determinant adjoint of A is A par n minus 1, where n is the order of the matrix. Since we are dealing with a 3 by 3 matrix, it is n squared. So this adjoint of A can be written as determinant of adjoint of A the whole squared, right? Adjoint of A is determinant A the whole squared. So adjoint of A determinant is determinant of adjoint of A the whole squared. Now again, this is determinant A the whole square, which is determinant A to the power 4. So adjoint of B is determinant A power 4, and this is 27A, adjoint of determinant of C. So all that we have done is, without evaluating adjoint of B or adjoint of or C, etc., we got this is determinant A to the power 4, and this is 27 times the determinant, which is A cube by 27. And what is determinant of A? Let me write the matrix once. 1 1 2 1 3 4 1 minus 1 3. So 1 into 9 plus 4 minus 1 into 3 minus 4 plus 2 into minus 1 minus 3, or 13 plus 1 minus 8. So 14 minus 8 is 6. So the answer is determinant of a cube by 27 is 6 cube by 27, which is 6 into 6 into 6. And you can cancel the 3 3's here, right? And it becomes 2, 2 and 2. So 8. The answer is option A, 8. Very simple problem. Remember, the adjoint of A, the determinant is equal to, the determinant of adjoint of A is determinant of A the whole square, 3 by 3 matrices, or n minus 1 in general. Okay. So it can be, you can say generally it is 2n, adjoint of A is going to be A power n minus 1 the whole power n minus 1. So it becomes A power n minus 1 the whole squared. Okay. Okay. Question number 20. Limit x tends to pi by 2. 1 minus tan x by 2 by 1 plus tan x by 2. 1 minus sin x by pi minus 2x the whole cube is. Now let us see, if x tends to pi by 2, of course all this is a 0 form here, and I get a 0 here also, 0 here also, so 0 by 0 form. How can we simplify this? First of all, 1 minus tan x by 2 by 1 plus tan x by 2 is tan of pi by 4 minus x by 2. So, and then from here also, if I pull out a 4, I can get the same expression, that is pi minus 2x the whole cube if I take a 4 from inside, pi by 4 minus x by 2, right? This becomes 64 times pi by 4 minus x by 2 the whole cube, right? So see, here also I have got that. So only 1 minus sin x remains, and I am going to do some trick here. 1 minus sin x can be written as 1 minus cos of 90 minus x. And 1 minus cos theta is 2 sin squared theta by 2. So 2 sin squared theta by 2 is pi by 4 minus x by 2, half of this angle. Whatever comes here, you put half here. So see, everything is now of the form pi by 4 minus x by 2. Okay. Now when x tends to pi by 2, pi by 4 minus x by 2 tends to 0. So if I take pi by 4 minus x by 2 as y, the whole thing can be written as tan y, right? This thing is tan y. And 1 minus sin x is 2, so let me write it here only. Tan y, this is 64y cube, and this is 2 sin squared y. So put it all there, tan y into 2 sin squared y by 64y cube. Limit y tends to 0. So that 2 and 64 can be taken out. Limit y tends to 0, and this can be separated as tan y by y and then sin y by y the whole square. So this both are 1. So the limit is 2 by 64 into 1, which is 1 by 32. A very nice problem, 1 by 32. Recognizing this pi by 4 minus x by 2 is key. Okay, now let us move on to the subjective numericals. From the string A, B, A, C, A, blah, 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 all that, if 5 letters should be selected, then the number of ways in which this selection can be done is very interesting problem. Very interesting problem. Okay, let's see how it can be done. How many A's are there? 1, 2, 3, 4. 5 A's are there. So I have A, let us say 5 A's. How many B's? 1, 2, 3, 4. So there are 4 B's. And how many C's? 1, 2 and 3 C's, 2 D's and an E. So 3 C's, 2 D's and an E. Now how to find the total number of selecting them? It's not arranging them, because if it's arranging you can go 15 factorial by 5, there is 5 factorial term, 5 terms repeating, another 4 terms repeating, another 3 terms repeating, another 2 terms repeating. This would be the answer for arrangements. But here you are only selecting. So this is no. Selections. How can you select? So first let us think of this. Now you can select 5 different letters, A, B, C, D, one of each kind. Or you can select 2 of one kind and 3 of another. Or you can select 3 of one kind and 2 unique. Or you can, so likewise, there are many combinations possible. So we'll write out how many combinations possible, and then from that we'll identify the total number. So first thing I'll do is all 5 unique. That is, it can be A, B, C, D, E. Now there is only one selection like this, right? To get A, B, C, D, E, there's only one chance. Okay. Now 2 like and 3 unique. That is 2 A's and then B, C, D. Or 2 C's and A, D, E. So 5 letters only, no? Okay. So like that, to take these 2 like letters, I can take the 2 like letters from A or B or C or D, right? So there are 4 possibilities of taking these 2 like letters. So from these 4 you have to choose one. These 2 like letters are 4C1. 2 A's or 2 B's or 2 C's or 2 D's. And 3 unique, right? 3 unique, which means the other 3 must be from the other. If I have chosen A, let us say 2 A's, then from these 4 letters I have to choose 3. That would be 4C3. This is 4 into 4, which is 16. Okay. Now, what is the next combination? If I say 2 like and this 3 unique, I am saying another 2 like and 1 unique. Okay. So I am taking 2 like and then 1 unique. So I can say 2 like from any of these 4. So 4C1. So I got 2 letters already. And then I can do another 2 like from any of the 3 remaining. Imagine I have taken 2 A's, then I can only take 2 B's or 2 C's or 2 D's. So that would give me a 3C1, and the remaining, that is the 1 letter, if I have chosen A and B, from the other 3 I can choose 1. So that is 3. Right? 2 like and 1 unique. So that's a 3C1. Or since it is 2 like, basically it is 4C2. Sorry, I made a silly mistake here. 2 pairs of likes, right? The argument is wrong. I'll explain why. 2 likes, that is from these 4, you have to choose 2 likes. 2 pairs of 2. It can be A or B, A, C, A, D, so on. So it's basically from these 4 you select 2 pairs. Okay, these 4 give you the possibility of selecting 2, 2, 2. So 2 pairs, and then after you selected 2 pairs, you have only 3 letters remaining. So from those 3 you choose 1. 4C2 is 6 and 3C1 is 3. So this gives 18 possibilities. So 2 like and 1 unique is also done. 2 like and 3 unique is also done. What else remains? That is, I can take, now I go for 3 similar, 3 likes and 2 unique. Okay. Now how can that be done? You can choose 3 from only 1, 2, 3. Right? 3 like terms can only be from these 3. So I can choose 3 A's or 3 B's or 3 C's. So which is from these 3 I choose either one, A, B or C, and then 2 unique. From all the other 4 letters I can choose any 2. So this also becomes 3 into 6, 18. Now instead of 3 like and 2 unique, I can take 3 like and 2 like terms also, like letters also. Let me write some examples here for you to understand is A, B, C, D, E. Here I am looking like A, B, C, D. Here I am looking like A, B, B and C. Here I am looking like A, B, C. Here I am looking like A, B, B, of this kind. So to choose A, basically if you see A, I can choose A or B, or C, C. So that is 3C1. And then to choose two like terms, imagine I have chosen already one of these three, no? So two like terms can be chosen from A, B, C or D, but one is already gone. So I have to choose those two from the other three. So that gives me another 3C1. So this is 9 terms. So the other combination is 4 similar terms and 1 unique term. Now 4 similar terms can only be obtained where you can only get 4 like terms here, one of these two, right? So it is 4 into, let's say 4C, excuse me, that is 4 letters can be obtained from 4 A's or 4 B's, so there are only 2 ways. And then from the remaining 4 letters you can choose any one, so it is 4. Then 4 like, 1 unique, and then finally 5 like is only one way, that is all A's. This is like A and then B, that kind. This is all A's. So see how many I have, 1 plus 16 plus 18 plus 18 plus 9 plus 8. How much does this evaluate? Oh sorry, plus 1, there is a plus 1 here, not to miss it, plus 1. So 18, 54, 63, 71. Okay, add all these things, you get 71 ways. So the number of letters is 71. Number of ways of selecting it. So I am just elaborating 5 unique, 3 unique and 2 others are like, 1 unique letter, 2 pairs of likes, 3 likes, 3 similar and 2 unique, 3 similar and 2 similar. So this way we have exhausted all possible combinations. Moving on to question number 22. Let A and B be 2 vectors such that A dot B is 0. A and B are unit vectors. So mod A is 1, mod B is 1 and A dot B is 0. This means A is perpendicular to B, mutually perpendicular. So A and B are perpendicular. And for some x comma y belong to R, let C equal XA plus YB plus A cross B. Now what is A cross B? A cross B is going to be, let us say, another vector, let us call it U vector, because it is also going to be of magnitude 1 and it is going to be mutually perpendicular to all 3, perpendicular to A and B, and already we have A is perpendicular to B. Therefore this A, B and U are 3 mutually perpendicular unit vectors. Okay, 3 mutually perpendicular unit vectors, these 3 terms A, B and A cross B. So I can take that as I, J and K for simplicity. So C vector can be written as Xi plus Yj plus K. See, I am just taking them as Ijk for convenience, because we know the properties of Ijk more readily than when we see A, B and some U and all. Okay. So now they say mod of C is 2, that the magnitude of C is 2, that is square root of x squared plus y squared plus 1 is 2, or x squared plus y squared is 4 minus 1, 3. Then they say the vector C is inclined at the same angle to both A and B. Okay, A is like my I, B is like J and U is like K. They said C is inclined at the same angle alpha to A and B. Now angle between C and A is I vector, can be written as C dot I by mod C mod I. Now let us say this angle is cos of alpha. C dot I is going to be x, mod C is 2. So x by 2 is cos alpha, or x is equal to 2 cos alpha. The same way, angle between C and B, say C and A, C and B, is also between C and J, like, no? So C dot J by C J. This is y. It will be y by 2, and this is also equal to cos alpha. So I get y is also 2 cos alpha. Basically, x is equal to y is equal to cos alpha. So now already x is 2 cos alpha, y is 2 cos alpha, and I have a relationship between x and y, that is x squared plus y squared is 3. So put x is 2 cos alpha, I get 4 cos squared alpha, plus y is also 4 cos squared alpha is 3, 8 cos squared alpha is 3. And they have in fact asked us for 8 cos squared alpha. Okay. The trick is to identify that A, B and A cross B are like I, J and K. 22. The number of solutions of 2 power sine of mod x is equal to 2 power mod of cos x in minus pi to pi is equal to. Now, sine of mod x in minus pi to pi is going to make it mod of, it's like, imagine sine of mod x, cos of mod x is the same in minus pi to pi because it's always positive, right? We know that cos is an even function anyway, so mod of cos x also even function. Excuse me, here is the drawing. See here, what is the easiest way to analyze? One is to think that this can be written as 2 power mod sin x also. Do you guess how? Because sine of mod x, which will make the angle positive, will make sin x positive. So anyway, I can keep the angle negative also and make the final sin x positive. So if I take log on both sides, log base e, let us say, log 2 into mod sin x becomes log 3 mod cos x. Or I can say mod sin x by mod cos x is log 3 by log 2. Now this is some number. Here I get mod of tan x is log 3 by log 2 or log 3 by log 2. Now this is a finite value, slightly greater than 1. So tan x will have a definite value, and how many values will it have in minus pi to pi? Right? In minus pi to pi covers all 4 quadrants, right? All 4 quadrants. Now in all 4 quadrants, tan x will have this angle, this value, because tan x in each quadrant goes from 0 to infinity. So this value will be there in all quadrants. It will be positive here, negative here, positive here, negative here. But mod of tan x will be positive everywhere, mod tan x. Therefore, there will be 4 roots in minus pi to pi, right? Minus pi starts from here to pi is like this. So minus pi to pi covers all 4 quadrants. So there are 4 roots. So the answer is 4. Okay. You can also think of it like this. That is, how will 2 sin x look like? Sin x. When x is 0, sin x is 0. So 2 sin x will be at 1. Then when x is 90, pi by 2, it becomes 2 sin 1. Sin of 90 is 1, so 2. It goes to 2. And then again at pi it becomes 0, so this way. The same thing would be here also. So sine of mod x, 2 power sine of mod x is going to be like this. This is 2 power sine of mod x. And this value is 2. What about 3 power cos x? 3 power mod cos x, when x is 0, it is going to be 1. So 3 power 1 is 3. It will start from 3 here. and then at pi by 2 it becomes 1 because x is pi by 2, this becomes 0, so 1, and then again it becomes 3. Here also it becomes 1 and 3. So you see cos x will be, this function will be like this or something like this. So both these curves you see intersect at 4 points, and those 4 are these 4 solutions. So graphically also you can come to a decent solution, I mean the correct solution graphically. Let us go to the last but one question. The point which is at the shortest distance from the line x plus y is equal to 7 and lying on an ellipse x squared plus 2y squared is 6 has coordinates a comma b, then the value of a by b is what? Okay, so how to find this? Imagine there is an ellipse, they said, which is like this. Okay, this is x squared plus 2y squared is 6, and there is a line x plus y is 7, and this cuts at 7 comma 0 and 0 comma 7 basically. So this line, you have to find the shortest distance from this line to the ellipse. Now the shortest distance, of course, you know, is from the point which will be perpendicular to this, right? That is, you draw the perpendicular from that point, it should touch this line. From here, if I draw a perpendicular, it's going to go this way. That is, both should have a common normal. Let us say in another sense, both the ellipse and this should have a common normal. Let us say that is some point here where the tangent is like this, and both share a common normal. Okay, both the ellipse and this are perpendicular. This point would be the point that is at minimum distance. So here we can say that this tangent here, since the normal is the same, this tangent should be parallel to this line. So it is using this condition I will find this point. Let us take this point to be x1 comma y1. Now you know tangent to the ellipses, to this ellipse, tangent can be written as at x1 comma y1, very simple, x1 plus 2y1 is 6. Remember, no? Any conic section, replace x squared by xx1, y squared by y1, x by x plus x1 by 2, y by y plus y1 by 2. This would give you the tangent at that conic at the point x1 comma y1. Okay. Now this tangent is parallel to x plus y is equal to 7. So this should be of the form x plus y is equal to some k, right? So this tangent should be of this form. Comparing the coefficients, I can say x1 by 1 here should be 2y1 by 1. Comparing this two, comparing only the coefficients of x and y. Or what can I say? x1 is 2y1. So this is the point that lies on the ellipse. So using this condition I can find what is that point. If x1 is 2y1 and x1 y1 lies on ellipse, I have already x1 square plus 2y1 square is 6. Substitute x1 is 2y1, I get 4y1 squared plus 2y1 squared is 6. This gives me 6y1 squared is 6, or y1 is plus or minus 1. Therefore x1 is plus or minus 2. Now plus or minus 1 would be here. So 2 comma 1 and 2 comma minus 1 basically are the points. 2 comma 1 and minus 2 comma minus 1 would be here. That would represent the farthest point possibly. Okay. So the point is 2 comma 1 is at the shortest distance, and this they have said to be equal to a comma b. Therefore a is 2 and b is 1. Therefore a by b is 2 by 1, which is equal to 2. And they have asked the ratio a by b, the answer is 2. Last problem. And this paper has been a bit lengthy because there are many difficult problems. Okay, tan inverse of 1 by something plus tan inverse of 1 by something else, tan inverse of 1 by something plus, etc., and then dy by dx at 0. Now don't even think of differentiating all these terms. Don't even do that, although even doing that you will end up with the same answer. But let's see how to make this whole thing a little bit easier. In fact, I'm thinking that even differentiating it is not a very bad idea. But the easier method is like this. If you take tan inverse of 1 by x square plus x plus 1, this can be written as tan inverse of 1 by 1 plus x into x plus 1, taking x common from here. This gives tan inverse of x plus 1 minus x. The numerator can be written as x plus 1 minus x, just adding x and subtracting x, by 1 plus x into x plus 1. This is the formula for tan inverse of x a minus, let's say this is b, this is ab, no, or ba. So tan inverse of a minus b by 1 minus ab is nothing but tan inverse of a minus tan inverse of b. So this can be separated as tan inverse of x plus 1 minus tan inverse of x. Okay. Then the same way, tan inverse of 1 by x squared plus 3x plus 3. If you note that it can be written as tan inverse of 1 plus x squared plus 3x plus 2, and once you have written it this way, you know that this x squared plus 3x plus 2 is x plus 1 into x plus 2. So the same thing you do in the numerator, you put x plus 2 minus x plus 1, which is also 1. So this will become tan inverse of x plus 2 minus tan inverse of x plus 1. Okay. So same way, this will become tan inverse of x plus 3 minus x plus 2. This is tan inverse of x plus 4 minus x plus 3. You can prove all that. So similarly, the third and fourth terms. Let me write those explicitly. That is tan inverse of 1 by this whole thing, x squared plus 5x plus 7, can be written as tan inverse of x plus 3 minus tan inverse of x plus 2. And finally, tan inverse of this term, 1 by x squared plus 7x plus 13, can be written as tan inverse of x plus 4 minus tan inverse of x plus 3. Adding all, the function y will become, if you see adding these two, you are eliminating already tan inverse of x plus 1 and x plus 1. Only tan inverse of minus x would remain. And then same way, x plus 2 would get eliminated, x plus 3 would get eliminated, and finally I would only have tan inverse of x plus 4 and tan inverse of x. This dy by dx is easy. This is 1 by 1 plus x plus 4 the whole squared minus 1 by 1 plus x squared. At x is equal to 0, dy by dx becomes 1 by 17 minus 1, or minus 16 by 17. Now they have given this value is minus k by 1 plus k. That is minus 16 by 17 is k by 1 plus k, minus k by 1 plus k. So I can take 16 plus 16k, cancel the negative on both sides, is 17k. K is equal to 16. So the answer is 16. A bit lengthy problem, but if you guess these things, it's quite easy. This brings us to the conclusion of another paper. This time it was a bit lengthy. Paper NTA test paper number 11. Keep trying, keep practicing all these problems. That is the only way to crack exams like JEE Mains. I will see you again with NTA test paper number 12. This is Santosh Dhul from Parthiam Mathematics Institute.